Terry Lynn, Traveling Artista. I haven't painted for a while because I've been working hard on my Patreon and other things, my workshops and classes, but I wanted to just get my hand going again today. So I'm painting something that's a very simple landscape, and I just thought I'd walk through it with you. This is not really a teaching video, it's just kind of a sharing video. So this is a German Erste paper. It's about 400 sanded. That's where I'm starting. First things first is I'm going to put my clear shield on. This is a hand protectant that I use a lot. It's getting low, but it lasts me quite a while. This has probably lasted me at least 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, I'm not sure. So it goes on as a mousse. It has aloe and silicone in it, so it protects my hands and creates a skin barrier. I like it a lot. So as that's drying, I'm going to finish taping down this edge. Again, I'm not worried about too much on the details. I just want to relax and have that creative spirit flow. Normally I will tape sanded paper like this that's going to curl. I normally tape it all the way around, but today I'm just going to, I've got clips holding it in the upper edges, and I am just going to set it there. I think I'm going to start with PanPastels as my underpainting. I always have my rag, hold it in my left hand. That way I can keep my hands clean, and before I set my pastel back in my collection, I can wipe it off so it's clean, and then I try to put it as close to its place in the box as I can get it, so then I know where to find it the next time. Normally I'll start with a vine charcoal to get my sketch down. I might do that, but this time I think I'm trying to think, do I want to do something different? I might want to do something different this time. Maybe something complementary. My painting is going to be mostly in the deep blue and rusty area. So let's see. If I have my deep blues, purples, and rust, I'm working basically with analogous colors. So let's throw in that underpainting with something in the complementary field. So I'm going for a lime green, because why not, right? First thing I want to do, I have a very long, thin format here. I'm going to start blocking in and designing my page. Let's see. This tree is not that interesting over on that side, so I'm going to make it more interesting. My horizon line is going to be about, on the photo it's about halfway up. That's tricky. I don't really want that. All right, so I have my photo. I've designed it so my horizon's about here, but the main part is about 1/3 of the way down. So I'm just touching the corner of my pastel to where I want this. It's not perfectly horizontal, but it's quite horizontal. I'm going to have a tree over here. I'm adjusting this tree because in the photo, to me, it's not a very interesting tree. So I'm trying to make interesting shapes with this tree, somewhat interesting. Okay, there's a little something in the background here. I'll just line that in. So very light. It's probably rather difficult to see on the video, but because it's this way, I can change it quickly just by wiping. I'm going to have a little grouping of trees there, another good sized tree coming forward here, massing, and nope, I have to be careful. I already have space. Look at this, very evenly spaced. I don't want that. I'm going to bring this one over a little bit, and I'm going to push this one over this way further. Now I have uneven spacing, which is good. These trees are further in the background, so if I'm thinking perspective, linear perspective, if it's the same size as this big tree in the foreground, these are going to be pushed back. I like this little branch that hangs out here. And then this is a separate tree here. These appear to be maple trees, so they have a rather round shape. But then on this area, they blend together into almost one large shape. Then there's a straight band across here in the photo. Don't want that. Not very interesting. Let's give that more interesting shape. So I'm going to bring it down in here. No, it dips there and it dips there. Don't want dipping and dipping. Let's bring this one up. Now we'll dip it down, but not off that corner. You never want a line going off the corner. That's kind of fun, but it's rather kind of light, right? It's going to be interesting to see how this changes from these light green lines into something that's more dramatic. I'm going to start and get some of my dark fine charcoal in here. This is going to help me define the composition. I don't want this so deep. I want it a little further down, but not too far down. Okay. Tap. That's just vine charcoal. I'm not too worried about it making dust. I want this tree to be my focal area and the brightest on the painting. Large masses of darker areas. Try to tie your darks together. They really, it's a good idea to get them connected somehow. Okay. Step back, always step back. Most of this is going to be a rather light painting. Tied. Nice. All right. That's a good start. Let's throw in some color. Starting with my PanPastels, this is just one of my palettes. I'm going to start with this deep purple and bring it in I use the largest tool possible to lay in my blocks of form and color. Continuing to work on connecting my darks, but kind of bringing in color at the same time. I've now picked up a bit of that deep magenta. And in the foreground, since this one's closer, let's warm it up a bit. Yeah, good. Yeah, I like that. Chunks of color. This is one reason why I do enjoy the PanPastels. You can throw in huge areas of color very quickly. This is more of a purple, a bluish purple for that tree as it sets back into the distance. And little cups, COPS, little cups in that distance. Okay. Thinking. Keep your mind going. Instincts are good, but it's important to have good thoughts and plans so you just don't end up. Look at how that harder pastel is resisting the PanPastel at that point. I'm not concerned because I'm going to come back over that with other pastels. Let's get some of these shades under the trees. I want to start, and I should have thought of this before I came in, but limiting my strokes. Some darker area under the tree there. I want light poking through this way. And a deeper blue over here. Step back, check the composition. It's working okay. I think I'm heading in the right way for this. I would need to stay away from my blue-greens. This is not that composition. This is not that color scheme is what I want to say. There. That one. And a hint of, because this is where I want that brilliance on that one. I've switched up my pan palette now. I like the holder here. This works really well. And I'm going to use the other side of my sponge. Lighter blue in the distance. Let's push that light blue in the distance. Is that in my color scheme? Yep, I think I'm okay there. As the pan pastel gets down, I have to really work to get my full brush, my full sponge loaded with this color. And for the foreground, I'm going to bring in a nice I'm going to kind of cool it down here. Now, warms advance, cools recede is the general rule. When we learn the rules, to break the rules. You could do this with watercolor or oil or acrylic in any aspect. Always step back, time to step back. I want a lot of light through this sky and the ground. Let's stay in this cooler section. Light. Make sure you pick up enough pastel. Be a good idea to do, right? Okay. I think I'm ready to move on. Let me double check my last colors in my PanPastels. This is my lighter set and has, wait. Let's check out the colors in my last PanPastel set. There might be something I want to add. I've already put those in. I don't want to get into the green. I remember to stay out of that. I want light. I think I'm ready to move into my soft pastels. You can clean your sponge on your rag, get most of that pan pastel off. Try to keep the lighter colors and the darker colors separate. If they get really bad and they're not all chewed up from the sand, you can actually wash these. Let them dry and use again. I use them quite a bit. Now I've got light coming in from my window and I'm going to be losing that pretty soon. So I'll try to adjust the video so that doesn't affect the way it looks. It's going to affect it somewhat. Light changes dramatically and sunlight is definitely the strongest. All right, let's start at the top and work down. I'm going to start with my harder pastels, reminding myself to stay in that certain family with the complements up in there. All right. This looks too deep. Test it. I think that is something I want down in here. Oh, here's one. I don't think I have a piece of this. Is this the same? I'm checking out. I like this lighter pink. So I'm going to get the paper off from this. Fun. Sometimes it gets hard now. This paper that the new company wraps around these is a little frustrating. It's almost better to buy a full set, but they are discontinuing the individual sticks anyway, so I won't have that problem anymore. None of us will. All right. Use the largest tool possible for as long as you can. I lay the pastel down right on its full side, so I'm applying color with all of this. I've never used this paper before. Somebody gave it to me, so I'm trying it out. I notice it's not picking up the pastel as evenly as I had thought it might. See how it's creating a texture? So I might have to do something to blend that. Actually, I think I'm going to do that now. As I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, ooh, this is not what I want it to do. All right, let me lie in a few more colors, a bit more pastel. I want that to fade off as it goes that way. Where do I want some of this in the foreground? Too light, maybe here. Does it matter whether this is grass or frost? Not really. As long as I'm laying it in, it's kind of interesting. I really want the focus on this color to be a deeper blue in certain areas. Tying these blues together. As we tied the blacks together, you also want to consider that each element, the blacks, the lights, the blues now, if you took everything else off this painting except this blue, would the painting work as an interesting design? It's kind of a push to make our minds work that way, but it's good to do. All right, I'm going to do the wash before I get too far. I said that, and now I'm going to do it. I think I'll do an alcohol wash on this. Make sure my brush is clean alcohol. Yeah, looks pretty good. Start with the lighter areas. But I don't think I do right now. Clean the brush, make sure it's clean as you move along. Don't worry about the drips. You're going to be painting over those later on. Right. Actually, sometimes a drip will add a really interesting texture. Unexpectedly. Those little unexpected things can be wonderful. Now I'm beginning to double guess that green that I put on there. But I did it, so we'll work with it. Strokes. This is kind of a horizontal flat area here, so I want my strokes to be going in that direction. All right. Laying this in. That green is not really going to be an element of the painting. It's just kind of laid in there. Now let's hit the darks. All right. This is a tree. You can see my strokes feel like clumps of leaves going in all different directions. Let them be irregular so they appear more natural. By setting this pastel in with the alcohol, I can come back over it with more control later on. Little trunk suggestions. Whoop, a little too much alcohol on that. Luckily I have my tray below to catch it. Let's get this one down somewhat. And then I'm going to have to wait for this all to dry because this is pretty wet. Here's an advantage. because it's cold out right now. The heat is on, and this will dry rather quickly. Whoop. Let's pull that out there a little bit more. I'm back in the flat ground, keeping it flat. That drip will be interesting, see what happens there eventually. Sound effects. Okay. It's just a little darker. I'm going to lift some of this because it's wet. I can just take my damp brush across it, and it will actually pick up some of that pastel. See, almost like watercolor, to soften that area in there. I don't want it quite that dark. Not really to soften it, lighten it a little bit. Let's see what this looks like right now. I have this huge clump of trees here. This will have to be defined later on. And I want to bring this down into here a little more. Okay. All right, it looks like mostly it's set in for the most part. I can see I'm going to have to change my alcohol pretty soon. It's beginning to get a little dark, not too dark yet. And I will go and wash my brush later on. This has alcohol and pastel in it, so I'll just give it a nice quick wash with soap and water, and it'll be nice and clean to use again. All right, at this point I see that this painting kind of has a mind of its own. It's going in a direction that I hadn't really planned, and I think basically because it's too dark. So I'm going to try to lighten it up and play around with it a bit more. So here's hoping. Let's just move along. All right, I'm going to make a major decision on the colors and work from there. I like those blues. I need to keep them in the warmer blue area. Let's go back to, I want to lighten this up a little bit. I want to lighten the whole thing up a little bit. Again, the full side of the pastel laying down, and I keep changing the angle of my hand. So it's going to create a variety of strokes. This will help soften that. Make sure your strokes are irregular. This I want. Those are trees way back. I'm going to pull in negative space around those later on. Step back. Now that underpainting is beginning to show through a little more. That's better. It's working better than I had seen it earlier. I'm going to take a few minutes, just throw in color, continuing the same approach at this point. Yep. I've switched to time lapse to shorten the video. I start working with my sky holes, cooling down the background to push it back, drawing through some light between the trees to create interest, leaving other areas more flat as resting spots, details of the trunks, varying the trunks so they're not all the same color nor the same size, and they're not little soldiers all lined up. That's one of the main things I'm always cautious about, checking out that there's no little soldiers. And that means items that are regularly placed in the same size, like fence posts. Even those, I'll vary them. I keep stepping back, checking my details, trying to add interest. I started adding lines with a heart of pastel, blending areas together, pulling in some more light. After this, I played with vertical lines and drips and tried to create more texture in the foreground while maintaining that distant focus of light, pulling the viewer through to what is beyond in the distance. I rather like how this one came out, somewhat monochromatic, that analogous feeling that I was looking for, with a little hint of that lime green spiced complement. Play around, enjoy some of the things that you might not normally do, because sometimes if you partner with your painting, you might get some unexpected surprises. Enjoy!